Like many fathers, mine could occasionally be prevailed on for a spot of airplane. As he launched me, my full weight would fall on the pivot point between his feet and my stomach. It was a discomfort well worth the rare physical contact, and certainly worth the moment of perfect balance when I soared above him. My father could spin garbage into gold. He could transfigure a room with the smallest offhand flourish. He could conjure an entire finished period interior from a paint chip. He was an alchemist of appearance, a savant of surface, a Daedalus of decor.
This is the wallpaper for my room? But I hate flowers.
Tough titties.
I was Spartan to my father's Athenian. Butch to his Nelly.
Who cares if the necklines don't match?
Yellow turtleneck now.
Utilitarian to his aesthete.
What's the point of making something that's so hard to dust?
It's beautiful. You need a necklace.
No way.
What are you afraid of, being beautiful? Put it on, goddammit.
Leave me alone!
Was he a good father? I want to say at least he stuck around, but of course he didn't. It's true that he didn't kill himself until I was nearly 20, but his absence resonated retroactively, echoing back through all the time I knew him. Maybe it was the converse of the way amputees feel pain in a missing limb. He really was there all those years, a flesh and blood presence, steaming off the wallpaper, digging up the dogwoods, polishing the finials, smelling of sawdust and sweat and designer cologne, but I ached as if he were already gone. There's no proof, actually, that my father killed himself. No one knew it wasn't an accident. His death was quite possibly his consummate artifice, his masterstroke. There's no proof, but there are some suggestive circumstances. The fact that my mother had asked him for a divorce 2 weeks before, the copy of Camus's A Happy Death that he'd been reading and leaving around the house in what might be construed as a deliberate manner. My realization at 19 that I was a lesbian came about in a manner consistent with my bookish upbringing, a revelation not of the flesh but of the mind. I'd been having qualms since I was 13, when I first learned the word due to its alarming prominence in my dictionary. I went to a meeting of something called the Gay Union, which I observed in petrified silence. But my mere presence, I felt, had amounted to a public declaration. I left exhilarated. It was in that tremulous state that I decided to tell my parents. Keeping it from them had started to seem ludicrous anyway. I did it via letter, a remote medium, but as I have explained, we were that sort of family. My father called after receiving it. He seemed strangely pleased to think I was having some kind of orgy.
Everyone should experiment. It's healthy.
Mom wouldn't come to the phone. But her return epistle arrived a week and a half later. As disapproval goes, I suppose it was rather mild. Still, I was devastated. What's lost in translation is the complexity of loss itself. In the same box where I found the photo of Roy, Dad's secret lover, there's one of Dad at about the same age. He's wearing a woman's bathing suit. A fraternity prank? But the pose he strikes is not menacing or silly at all. He's lissom. Elegant. In another picture, he's sunbathing on the tar paper roof of his frat house just after he turned 22. Was the boy who took it his lover? As the girl who took this Polaroid of me on my 21st birthday was mine? The exterior setting, the pained grin, the flexible wrists, even the angle of shadow falling across our faces. It's about as close as translation can get. What, reduced to their simplest reciprocal form, were Dad's thoughts about my thoughts about him, and his thoughts about my thoughts about his thoughts about me. He knew that I thought that he was a queer, whereas he knew that I knew that he knew that I was too.
I wondered if you knew what you were doing when you gave me that Colette book, the one about the 18th century lesbians in France.
What? Oh. Then there was a boy my senior year of college. When I was little, I really wanted to be a girl. I didn't really. It was just a guess. I dress up in girls' clothes.
I wanted to be a boy. I used to dress up in boys' clothes, remember?
I kept still, like he was a splendid deer I didn't want to startle.
I guess there was some kind of identification.
It was not the sobbing, joyous reunion of Odysseus and the Telemachus. It was more like fatherless Stephen and soundless Bloom, having their equivocal late-night cocoa at 7 Eccles Street.
My first experience was when I was 14. Norris Johnson. He helped out at the farm. He was really well built with black wavy hair. It was pretty nice.
But which of us was the father? I had felt distinctly parental listening to his shameful recitation, and all too soon we were at the theater. What if Icarus hadn't hurtled into the sea? What if he'd inherited his father's inner bent? What might he have brought? He did hurtle into the sea, of course. But in the tricky reverse narration that impels our intertwined stories, he was there to catch me when I leapt. When speaking of her father's death in her graphic autobiography, Alison Bechdel makes many mentions of Camus's A Happy Death. A Happy Death was Camus's first novel. The topic of this novel is the will to happiness. This existentialist topic focuses on the conscious creation of one's happiness and the need or time and money to do so. The book is composed of 2 parts, the first titled Natural Death and the second titled Conscious Death. The novel incorporates Camus's memories while recounting events. The novel describes what it is like to live an empty life, a life without meaning. This life is very similar to the one in which Bechdel's father is living. Her father is married with children, but is also a struggling homosexual. He doesn't feel as though he belongs anywhere and relates a great deal to Camus. In her autobiography, Bechdel states that A Happy Death is a novel about a consumptive hero who does not die a particularly happy death. Her father had been reading Camus's novel, and she saw this as a sign of her father's suggested suicide. In her novel, she states that one line in particular was highlighted in Camus's novel. It read, "He discovered the cruel paradox by which we always deceive ourselves twice about the people we love. First, to their advantage, then to their disadvantage." This line is an appropriate statement to describe Bechdel's parents' marriage. Although she may never know whether or not her father's death was planned or was an accident, she truly believes that he caused his own death. Throughout the novel, Bechdel also seems to blame herself for her father's death. She feels that her homosexuality might have caused her father's suggestive suicide. Although this is something that she has no proof about, it seems as though she sticks with it because it is the one bond that holds her and her father together. The fact that Bechdel's autobiography was written in the form of a graphic novel really helps the reader to understand what her life was like. By incorporating pictures into the story, the reader actually gets a glimpse of what it would be like to be in Bechdel's shoes. As stated in the Journal of Adolescent and Adult Literacy, graphic novels offer value, variety, and a new medium for literacy that acknowledges the impact of visuals. By looking at illustrations along with words detailing the author's life, the reader becomes immediately entranced in the novel. As stated in the Reference and User Services Quarterly, graphic novels are a direct reflection of the author's life and upbringing. Traditional storytelling elements are not lost within these novels, but improved by the moral foundation and unique viewpoint of the artist. Through Bechdel's novel, the reader was able to see what her home and family looked like, rather than just reading about it. This sense of sight is something that I think is very important in Bechdel's novel because she did not have a close-knit family who expressed their feelings well. So by looking at illustrations depicting events in which there was no communication, one easily understands the relationship she shares with her family. This is seen in this strip of her novel. Her family did not communicate a great deal, and this illustration depicts that perfectly. Because graphic representations are so important, I decided to have the first half of this video be a reenactment of some scenes in Bechdel's novel, a medium that is more easily understood. In graphic novels, expressiveness is extremely important. Through graphic novels, one can explore how color affects emotion and how angles of viewing affect perception. These are all factors that enable a reader to really understand the author, and they are all present in Bechdel's autobiography, Fun Home, A Family Tragicomic.